John Carter, a seasoned journalist known for debunking supernatural claims, arrives in the small, isolated town of Blackwood. The locals are wary of him, whispering about the cursed Blackwood Manor on the outskirts of town. The manor's previous owner, Charles Blackwood, vanished decades ago under mysterious circumstances. Despite the townsfolk's warnings, John is determined to uncover the truth. Armed with his camera, recorder, and a healthy dose of skepticism, he makes his way to the manor. Convinced that the stories are nothing more than folklore, Blackwood Manor looms ahead, a decaying Gothic structure surrounded by overgrown trees and a thick, unnatural mist. The windows are shattered, and the walls are covered in ivy, as if nature itself is trying to reclaim the building. John steps inside, the air thick with dust and the scent of mildew. The floorboards creak under his weight, and the faint sound of whispering fills the air, though he can't pinpoint its source. Strange symbols are carved into the walls, their meaning unknown but unsettling. Despite his skepticism, John feels a growing sense of unease. As night falls, John sets up his equipment in the main hall. He hears footsteps echoing through the halls, though he's alone. Following the sound, he discovers a locked room. Using a crowbar, he forces the door open and finds a journal belonging to Charles Blackwood. The journal speaks of a malevolent entity that haunts the manor, feeding on fear and trapping its victims. As John reads, the door slams shut behind him, plunging him into darkness. The whispers grow louder, and he feels an icy breath on the back of his neck. Panicked, he fumbles for his flashlight, only to see a shadowy figure dart across the room before vanishing. John escapes the room, but the manor feels alive. The whispers grow louder, and he begins to experience vivid hallucinations. Shadowy figures lurking in the corners, bloodstains appearing and disappearing on the walls, and the sound of someone screaming in the distance. His skepticism wavers as fear takes hold. While exploring, he discovers a hidden passage behind a bookshelf. The passage leads to the basement, and as he peers down the dark staircase, he hears a faint, guttural growl. The section ends with John hesitating at the top of the stairs, unsure whether to descend or flee. John descends into the basement, his flashlight flickering. The air is cold and damp, and the walls are covered in strange, pulsating symbols that seem to shift under the light. He finds a series of cages, their bars twisted and broken, as if something had escaped from within. In the center of the room stands a large, blood-stained altar, surrounded by candles that flicker, despite the lack of wind. The growling grows louder, and John feels a presence closing in around him. John reads more of the journal, learning the horrifying truth. Charles Blackwood had attempted to summon a powerful entity to gain immortality, but instead, he unleashed a malevolent force that consumed him. The entity feeds on fear, using hallucinations to break its victims before trapping their souls within the manor. Charles's final entry describes his descent into madness, begging for someone to destroy the entity before it's too late. As John reads, he hears a voice whispering his name, and the journal's pages begin to bleed ink. The whispers grow deafening, and the entity manifests as a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. It towers over John, its form shifting and twisting unnaturally. John tries to fight back, but the entity is intangible, its laughter echoing through the basement. Just as it seems to close in, John notices a glint beneath the altar. He grabs a silver dagger, its blade inscribed with ancient runes. The entity recoils, giving John a moment to escape. The section ends with John clutching the dagger, realizing it may be the key to defeating the entity. The entity attacks John with relentless fury, using his deepest fears against him. He sees visions of his past failures, the people he's lost, and the mistakes that haunt him. The hallucinations grow more intense, but John fights to maintain his sanity. Clutching the dagger tightly, John uses the journal to devise a plan. The dagger can banish the entity, but he must stab it into the heart of the manor, the altar in the basement. He knows the entity will try to stop him, but he has no other choice. Gathering his courage, John prepares for the final confrontation. John lures the entity to the basement, where they engage in a terrifying battle. The entity's illusions grow more intense, but John uses the dagger to counter its power. The walls of the manor seem to close in, and the air grows thick with the stench of decay. With a final, desperate strike, John plunges the dagger into the altar. A blinding light fills the room, and the entity lets out a deafening scream before vanishing. The manor falls silent, and John collapses, exhausted but alive. He stumbles out of the manor, the dagger still in hand. As he drives away, he notices the dagger's runes glowing faintly, and the whispers return, faint but unmistakable. The entity is never truly gone. The story ends with John looking back at the manor, its windows glowing faintly, as if watching him leave.